Day 6 of the June 97 7-day retreat in Springwater. Does the calendar say this is the first day of summer? Feels that way. Because someplace on the other side of the globe it may be the first day of winter. Same day. We were getting a little bit into this toward the end of last group meeting yesterday afternoon. One person remarking that here in retreat the day is so long, and she was not referring to daylight. Whereas at home the day is over before you know it. So crowded with things. And for each of the things we usually don't have enough time. This is how we put it to ourselves. And here, there can be time for everything because there is not much that fills the day as far as activities are concerned, schedule and so forth. But I'm wondering deeper than that. Is it that when one is present, at least for moments at a time, there is no sense of time? Try to check it out. Maybe you've already discovered this. That when there's complete here-ness, beingness now, here, the thought of time does not crowd and pressure. At the beginning of the retreat, I remarked in the opening talk, one has done this thing for many years, in many places. And yet it's always this moment of nowness. Only thought supplies the time framework. Oh, this was 5, this was 20 or 30 years ago. But that's thought imposing something through memory on what is always here. Someone else expressed it differently, saying in this retreat, for the particular person, the first one ever, so many ups and downs, roller coaster was the expression used. An ecstatic mood, and sure as anything, followed by down. And then up again, and then down again. But maybe it was partly a question or a discovery that through this up and down of the wave is there something that is even untouched by the ups and downs. Present. Not in the presence as a concept of time, just using that word to denote something that is beyond words. So many people remarked, like one person, all I'm watching, all I'm observing is self-centered thoughts. Is there any thought that is not self-centered, somehow or other connected with me? That's all I'm observing. And the question comes, is there something more than this? It's an interesting phenomenon to look at, how we're so engaged with what it is that is observed, that what eludes us is the observing, the attention, the awareness, which makes it possible to say all I'm observing is self-referential thoughts. And then, of course, the judgment or the desire to have something other than this. Is there more? Something else? And all the while, clouding over this presence, which is there no matter what the thoughts do and say, or when they cease, maybe for moments at a time. Happens for all of us. It's just crowing and cawing and warming and winding and breathing, heart beating. But not the words. The words are used because we're here in a hall together, talking to each other, listening to each other, communicating something which is beyond words. Somebody asked that. How did he put it? When you say, just listen to the flies buzzing at the window, the airplane humming or the distant traffic, you don't mean those things, do you? No, I don't mean those things. Even though they are expressed in the words. But the listening is not of things, it's listening. And sounds and sensations and moods, emotions and tensions or bliss and joy come and go in this all-embracing, quiet awareness, which, as I say, is overlaid with our deeply conditioned, habitual concern with what it is that is seen or projected, evaluating it, trying to get at its meaning, trying to have it more or not at all, interfering, meddling with what appears and disappears on its own. Thought is the meddler. Thought coming out of memory, which is the past. Here comes to mind what came up yesterday in a group meeting. Sort of the topic was trying to grapple with this thing of hearing somebody say there is no me, there is no I. Personality is a phantom of remembrance and thought, which creates things. Thought creates all kinds of things. Everything that we've built and constructed and invented has thought as its basis. So there was this grappling with, on the one hand, the idea that this may not be true, and the felt sense that it is true. There is me, I'm right here. I can feel it. When one person lifted his hand, said, I'm now willing to lift my hand and put it on the knee. It's happening from here. I'm doing it. I'm willing or intending it. But see, we don't look carefully enough or wisely enough or openly enough without identification with this hand, with this knee, and with me as a cherished idea. We don't look wide enough. If we could look wide enough, maybe we would see that the hand lifts due to the whole past that's ever happened, and falls on the knee and talks about it due to the whole evolution of existence. It's not separate from it. But thought hooks in at a certain point and says, I willed that. But it doesn't know what it's saying or doing. It just makes claims and then believes in it. When one sits quietly watching the movement of motive, of intention, of wanting, one realizes that these things go on due to one knows not why, wanting this, not wanting that, imagining something and then wanting that. And one can say, I'm doing all of that, but that's just verbiage put onto a process which is running in an incredibly complex, interlinked way with everything that's happened to us and to each other in the past. When I was in Germany this spring, somebody gave me a book which had just been published, at least very recently, by a brain researcher with an amazingly clear language, trying to make ordinary people understand what he has found, and also tremendous reference to sources. It's not an easy book to read, but what was interesting to me, and he says he leaves all mysticism aside, all spiritual practices, or he's not going into that. But he says there is no such thing as a place or location or function as the eye to be found in the brain. It's all an interworking of connections, many different levels of the brain, from the most primitive to the most elaborate, most recent, interacting. So he concludes, there is no ego. Just throwing that in. I don't know for what good it is. That's what makes it difficult to read this book, because it comes from the outside, looking in, as it were. But what's easy for me to follow is when somebody comes from the inside, looking at what is actually, directly, concretely experienced. If you talk from that, then we can really communicate. And it's very difficult because we're totally schooled and trained and habituated to talk on the theoretical level. Not all the time, but to feel very comfortable there. And not realize that it's just floating there, it's not grounded. That's why it's so good when we get together in a group and somebody says, what do you mean by this? And that is never a reproach or trying to put somebody on the spot, but trying to ground this thing into where we can all look together from what we see right now or from what we don't see, and then to acknowledge that, which I always find people do very freely here in a retreat, to acknowledge what one doesn't understand. talking about that for a moment. One person saying to me, what you say where I am right now does not seem logical, it does not seem reasonable. And yet in talking together, it was clear that there have been some glimpses, which we usually discount. The theorizing and talking abstractly about ourselves and the world takes over so quickly, is so prevalent, discounting or even forgetting a real insight, revealing reality, what really is. So, even though one does not understand what is being said, no need to discount it or debunk it. To question it, yes. To keep it at the back of one's mind where it lodges anyways if one is really interested in this stuff. And it functions there in some mysterious way. So that maybe comes a moment where, yes, this is so I can see it. And when it's really seen, it's no longer illogical, it's very logical. But one has to be here, not all encumbered by walls around oneself. The walls of illusion about what we are and what the world is, and what our relationship with each other is. But if you don't experience it directly, come upon it immediately, then the mind naturally, I would say, sets out to speculate about it. And then such questions arise as, well, if there is no one in here, why would we ever do anything? If there's no doer, why would one ever, or would one ever do anything? Actually, upon reflecting, like the person who said, all my thoughts are self-referential, most of the things we do, what good are they? That we think we are doing when we're being active. A lot of them create problems, have consequences, good ones or bad ones. But leaving that aside, where does the doer come from? We believe, we think, we speculate or theorize that this doer inside has a free will and a free choice. Don't we? We've heard it all our life. I just read someplace recently that in Hinduism, there is no such concept of free will. But here in Western religious and other tradition, the whole movement of the Renaissance, freeing to travel, to investigate, to doubt the church, to speak out individually. We believe in this free will, which biblically speaking, God bestowed upon Adam and Eve. We can't go into this, too complicated. Adam and Eve. So, do we have free will? I argued this ad infinitum in my teens. I loved to be philosophical and cherish people who would correspond with me about whether there was free will or predestination. But again, let's not just insist on it because we like the idea and are attached to it and fear the idea that we may not have free will and therefore are not willing to examine it. Let's look at it. Put a huge magnifying glass on this movement that we call my free will. Trace it. What makes me want this? Not cynically, not with, what is it called? Knowledge of forethought or something. To watch it. Where does my desire to go for this or do this or change my profession or relate to somebody or leave somebody, where does it all come from? Where do the emotions come from? Where does the imagery arise from? The ideas of what is desirable and valuable and what is not. Doesn't it all come from the past? How we've grown, how we've evolved, how we've been educated. Our tastes have evolved, they have been educated. And if you say, no, I have an intrinsic taste for composing music, like this amazing phenomenon of Mozart. Where did he get it from? Did he will to compose music? Because his father wanted him to do this. But his father could have beat his head and Mozart's head against the wall. Nothing would have come out. There had been an incredible configuration of inheritance, inherited sensitivity. Who knows what all goes into this kind of incomprehensible creation? It's not due to will, to my choice. Some people want to be a composer. Well, there's this movie, Amadeus, maybe most of you have seen it, where this one man has struggled so hard to be a composer, willed it so much, and can't bring it off, except in a mediocre way. So the doer, the willer, is a creation of the past, operating. This moment of rejecting this, clinging to that, desiring this and fearing that. Don't accept it, don't buy it, watch it, test it, explore it. It's marvelous to trace and to discover. It's not depressing, because if something is discovered, there is some openness. The sky opens and there's a little bit of blue there and sunshine coming through. That is a tremendously energizing thing to discover about oneself, which means discover about human beings, not just this one here. So the question, would I ever be doing anything if there was no doer here, if there was openness? Freedom from the past, let's put it that way. For moments at a time, not positing an eternity of it. Well, find out. The moment there's some room, the congestion lifts and there's tremendous creative activity. There's so much to be done. It comes to us. We don't have to go out after it. And by creative energy, I don't mean necessarily painting pictures or composing symphonies. It's doing what needs to be done with an amazing presence. An amazing energy of action, which is not hindered by motive or by an eye out for success or a fearful eye out for failure. I'm just saying these things to put the speculative mind to rest, if that is possible. Not worrying, because such worrisome thoughts and assumptions can make one resist this thing of entering into quietness, having all kinds of new ideas cropping up. Well, what if this brings that there won't be a doer anymore? I'll probably be wasting away in sloth and torpor. Somebody asked me about sloth and torpor in this room. And it had come up in a previous retreat, not in any meeting in which I was present, but a group had gotten into the sloth and torpor discussion and then brought it up to me. I remembered those terms from way back. And it cropped up in the Dutch retreat. I used that word, and it was quite an amazement on the part of people. Why do I use those terms? They're not like me at all, and they sort of aroused guilt feelings, because we all feel sloth and torporific a good part of the time. So how did this person ask the question? It was good. Whether something would lead to that. I don't remember what that something was. But it was very likely, again, a projected, fearful idea. Sloth and torpor, these beautifully romantic terms, or dramatic terms, are resistance, aren't they? Choked by resistance, or at least surrounded by it. Inwardly, thick with it. All kinds of ideas. I can't do it. It's too much for me. Why always me having to do more, another job? To become intimate with the fact how ideas constipate us into inaction. And that if one starts out and tries and disregards the idea, not go with it, not believe it, not repress it, you see it, but you don't put credence into it, and just do this thing, it's always amazing how easy it goes. What was difficult was the hump before it, the hump of resistance, consisting of a million ideas about it, all gathered and accumulated in the past. But what's good for me, what is possible for me, and so forth. Too much, no time. So a disregarding brings the energy to do without time, without worry about time. Time is a thought. Do you see that? What I can do for the rest of the day, how much time I will have for the rest of my life. Somebody said that. I'm not worried about dying. I'm worried that I may not truly understand in time. And at the moment of dying, think, oh my God, I wasted my whole life. We were admonished with this ad infinitum at the Zen Center. Use this as a pressure, arouse anxiety. And this can be an anxiety-arousing thought. So can you see that thought as a thought? And the connection with anxiety is happening without any intervention of an I wanting to feel anxious or wanting to think this thought. It's just happening. And not enter into this whole complication of thinking it out, but remain with seeing, with being, with attending, without knowing. then where is the beginning of life or the ending of life? At such a moment of simply being without. Somebody asked me, can you say something about forgiveness, forgiving another? What is forgiveness? And the need to forgive. One may be told by counselors or whoever that unless you forgive this person, love can't enter your heart, or your heart can't open up completely. So, what is forgiveness? What does it mean to forgive somebody? Again, our constructed thought mechanism says, use your willpower to forgive this person. Even if it's difficult. You've got to rouse yourself to forgive him or her. To settle things, but it is just a surface ripple on an ocean that is not understood. Why do I hold a grudge against anybody? No matter what has happened to me, my childhood, youth, adult life. What is holding the grudge? What is this whole business of grudge holding? Of course you could say, well, the hurt is there. The injury has been done to the body and mind. And how attached and identified is one with this injured body-mind? Imagining this to be the true me, the true self. We talked about it yesterday at great length, our identification, unquestioned identification with this body-mind and its story, its ever-evolving life story. The attachment to it. Identification meaning no more and no less than the thought, this is me, and me has a feeling about it, a body feeling, mental feelings, what I am. Because every story, every thought about myself, every hurt received or flattery accepted has physical repercussions and expressions which fortify the feeling, yes, there is really somebody here, rather than seeing just the connection between thought, spoken word, and resultant reflexive feelings. That's what we learn in meditation, to see that connection that happens there without thinking, I'm here. Or I'm not here. So, do we see the strong identification with this body and its life story as me? And do we wonder whether this is true? Somebody says, many people say, no, it's not true. But we have to examine it ourselves and come upon it ourselves. That there's something to us, something is a poor word, I don't find another one right now. There's something to us that transcends all personality and personal history. That is common and vast and whole, and not injurable, cannot be injured, and therefore does not need to forgive. Because if somebody who has hurt me lets me know some way or other that they need my forgiveness, I will gladly talk with them and do whatever it takes to lessen this burden of thinking, I'm guilty, I've done something. But I don't need to say I forgive you, because I've never, well, maybe in the past. What is the opposite word of forgive? What do you do when you don't forgive? I've never heard that. What is that word? Carried a grudge. The mind, which is more and more present, drops grudges just like going through a sieve. Not all of them equally, maybe, because the body is so sensitive, so clingy and tracy. But particularly the more recent ones are so quickly forgotten. The earlier ones I don't remember. For a while something is carried, but then by being present and listening to these crows cawing and squawking, if it's crows, somebody said it's wild turkeys. How this mind is not interested in nursing grudges and is not identified with this story. So, what I'm interested in is not forgiving and being forgiven, but understanding. The depth of understanding of why we do the things we do. And they are done out of ignorance, inattention, unawareness, caught upness in the circuit of the past, habits, and desires and fears. In that circuit, all the mischief happens, all the hurts, and all the forgiveness. But outside that circuit, there is just understanding of the circuit. And understanding from one's own experience and seeing it in each other, how we do crazy things when we're not here. We're just going with an impulse from the past. Strong desire, strong fear. Conditioned at the time of Adam and Eve. So, can there be an awakening of understanding, which inevitably comes when one spends quiet time with oneself and one's thoughts and emotions and birds and trees and this amazing awareness which belongs to no one. It's not a personal property of anyone. It opens up when the personal flower folds up for a moment, or who knows how long. we will end here for today.